One accidental swipe changed everything for Jason Miller. When the exhausted single father mistakenly liked his ex-wife's sister's dating profile at 2 a.m., he never imagined it would lead to a text that would reopen old wounds and create new possibilities. Stay with me until the end to discover how one embarrassing mistake became the catalyst for healing, forgiveness, and an unexpected second chance at love. If this story touches your heart, please like this video and subscribe to see more stories about finding connection in our complicated modern world. Jason Miller stared at his phone in horror, the blue light illuminating his face in the darkness of his bedroom. 2:17 a.m., and he'd just made what might be the worst social media mistake of his life. No, he muttered, frantically tapping the screen as if he could somehow undo what he'd just done. But the dating app cheerfully informed him that, "You and Ellie have matched," with a shower of digital confetti. Ellie Matthews. His ex-wife's younger sister. The woman who'd been a bridesmaid at his wedding 8 years ago. The woman who'd held his newborn daughter with tears in her eyes. The woman who'd taken his ex-wife's side in the divorce, understandably, but still painfully. And he'd just liked her profile on DateRight, the dating app his friend had convinced him to join after 3 years of post-divorce solitude. Jason dropped his phone on the bed as if it had burned him. This was a disaster. He'd only been mindlessly scrolling through profiles to humor his friend Dave, who insisted it was time to get back out there. He hadn't even been reading the profiles, just flicking through faces in a sleep-deprived haze after finally getting his 5-year-old daughter Zoe to bed following a particularly difficult evening of homework struggles and bedtime resistance. He picked up the phone again, wondering if there was a way to unmatch or at least explain that it had been an accident. But before he could figure it out, a notification appeared. A message from Ellie. "So, you're on dating apps now?" Jason groaned, flopping back against his pillows. Of all the profiles in Chicago, how had Ellie's even appeared in his feed? They lived in different neighborhoods, ran in different social circles, and had carefully avoided each other since the divorce. The algorithm must have matched them based on mutual interests or something equally meaningless in the face of their complicated history. He stared at her message, unsure how to respond. Was she angry? Amused? Just awkwardly acknowledging the situation? Her tone was impossible to decipher through text. After several false starts, he finally typed, "Yes. Sorry about the accidental like. Wasn't paying attention to who I was swiping on." He hit send, then immediately regretted the wording. Now it sounded like he'd found her profile and deliberately rejected it. He quickly added, "I mean, I didn't realize it was you. Not that I wouldn't like your profile if I knew. This is awkward." 3 dots appeared, indicating Ellie was typing. Jason held his breath. "Extremely awkward," came her reply. "Especially since Kate just called me freaking out that you're stalking me online." Jason sat bolt upright. "Kate knows? How?" "Dating apps show mutual friends. She has the app too." "Great." His ex-wife thought he was cyber-stalking her sister. This night couldn't get worse. "I'm not stalking anyone," he typed furiously. "It was a genuine accident. I've been on the app for all of 2 hours. Tell Kate she can relax." The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times, as if Ellie was writing and rewriting her response. Finally, "I believe you. Kate's just protective. It's been a rough year." Jason frowned at this. He and Kate had been divorced for 3 years now. Their relationship was strained but functional, centered entirely around co-parenting Zoe. They communicated through a parenting app and brief exchanges during drop-offs and pickups. He knew almost nothing about Kate's personal life anymore, and he'd assumed the same was true in reverse. "Everything okay?" he found himself asking, then immediately wondered why he cared. Another pause before Ellie's response, "Not really my place to say. Anyway, no harm done with the app thing. We can just unmatch and pretend it never happened." The sensible response would be to agree. To unmatch, forget this embarrassing incident, and go back to the careful distance they'd maintained since the divorce. But something made Jason hesitate. He hadn't spoken to Ellie in years, but he remembered her as the fun-loving, kind-hearted counterpoint to Kate's more serious personality. She'd been an elementary school art teacher, passionate about her work and adored by her students. She'd always been good with Zoe, even as a baby. And if he was being completely honest with himself, he'd always enjoyed her company. "We could do that," he typed slowly. "Or we could catch up sometime. As friends," he added hastily. "It's been a long time, and Zoe still asks about her Aunt Ellie occasionally." This time the pause was so long that Jason thought she wasn't going to respond at all. He was about to send a message retracting the suggestion when his phone pinged. "Coffee? Saturday morning? There's a place called Groundwork near me that's good. Zoe would be welcome too." Jason stared at the message, surprised by the acceptance and the specific invitation. "Saturday works. 10 a.m. Zoe will be with Kate this weekend. 10 a.m. See you then." Jason set his phone down, a mixture of anxiety and something like anticipation swirling in his stomach. What had he just agreed to? A friendly catch-up with his former sister-in-law? A potential minefield of old family tensions? And why had he suggested it in the first place? Too wired to sleep now, he got up and padded to the kitchen for a glass of water. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of the city outside. It was a decent two-bedroom in a family-friendly neighborhood, chosen primarily for the good elementary school nearby. Nothing fancy, but comfortable enough for him and Zoe. Photos of his daughter covered the refrigerator: Zoe at the beach last summer, Zoe on her first day of kindergarten, Zoe missing her 2 front teeth and grinning widely. His life revolved around her now, had done since the divorce. Between his job as a graphic designer for a marketing firm and single parenthood, there hadn't been much time for a social life, let alone dating. Dave had been pushing him for months to get back in the game, insisting that Zoe needed to see her father happy and fulfilled. "Kids with happy parents do better," he'd argued over beers last week. "And you, my friend, are not happy. You're existing." Jason had finally downloaded the app just to shut Dave up. He hadn't expected to actually connect with anyone, and certainly not with Ellie Matthews of all people. As he sipped his water, he found himself wondering what Ellie's life was like now. Was she still teaching? Still living in that bright apartment with the wall of bookshelves? Still wearing her dark hair in that messy bun she'd always favored? The realization that he knew nothing about her current life made him sad in a way he hadn't anticipated. Saturday. Coffee. A conversation with someone from his past who wasn't directly tied to his failed marriage. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Or maybe it would be a complete disaster. Only one way to find out. Groundwork Coffee turned out to be a cozy cafe with exposed brick walls, hanging plants, and the rich aroma of freshly ground beans. Jason arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a black coffee, and claimed a small table near the window where he could watch for Ellie's arrival. He'd changed shirts 3 times that morning, finally settling on a simple blue button-down that Dave had once told him brought out his eyes, whatever that meant. His dark hair was freshly trimmed, and he'd even dug out the cologne he rarely bothered with these days. All for a casual coffee with his ex-wife's sister. He was clearly losing his mind. At precisely 10 a.m., the door opened, and Ellie walked in. Jason's first thought was that she looked essentially the same, dark hair pulled back, though in a neater ponytail rather than her old messy bun, bright eyes, that slightly crooked smile. But as she approached, he noticed differences too. She moved with more confidence than he remembered, and there was a new maturity to her face that suited her. "Jason," she said, reaching the table. "It's been a while." 3 years, 4 months, he replied, then winced at his precision. "Give or take." Ellie's smile widened slightly. "But who's counting, right?" "Right. He stood awkwardly, unsure whether to hug her or shake hands or just nod like the strangers they'd become. Ellie solved the dilemma by setting her purse down and gesturing to the counter. "I'm going to grab a coffee." "Still taking yours black like it's some kind of punishment?" Jason glanced down at his mug, surprised she remembered. Some habits die hard. While Ellie ordered, Jason tried to calm his inexplicably racing heart. This was just coffee with an old friend, well, not exactly a friend, but someone he'd known well once. There was no reason for the nervous energy coursing through him. Ellie returned with a large latte and a blueberry muffin, settling across from him with that direct gaze he'd forgotten about, the one that always made him feel like she could see right through him. "So," she said, breaking the muffin in half and offering him a piece, which he declined with a shake of his head. "Dating apps." Jason groaned. "Can we start with something less embarrassing? How's teaching going?" A shadow crossed Ellie's face. "I'm not teaching anymore, actually. I left the school system last year." "Oh." Jason felt wrong-footed already. "I'm sorry to hear that. You loved teaching." "I did," Ellie agreed, taking a sip of her latte. "But things change. I'm working at the Children's Museum now, developing their educational programming. It's different, but I still get to work with kids and art, just in a new way." "That sounds perfect for you," Jason said, meaning it. "Zoe would love that museum. I should take her sometime." At the mention of Zoe, Ellie's expression softened. "How is she?" "Kate shows me pictures, but it's not the same." "She's amazing," Jason said, unable to keep the pride from his voice. "Starting to read now, loves science, still obsessed with those little collectible animal figures. She's got about 100 of them lined up on her bookshelf." "The Wilderness Pals?" "She was just starting to collect those before." Ellie trailed off, the unspoken, before the divorce, hanging between them. "Yeah, those. She organizes them by ecosystem now. Her teacher says she has a scientific mind." Ellie smiled. "That doesn't surprise me. She was always so curious, even as a toddler." She hesitated, then added, "I've missed her." The simple statement carried a weight of sadness that caught Jason off guard. He'd been so focused on helping Zoe adjust to the divorce, on establishing new routines and ensuring she felt secure, that he hadn't fully considered what other relationships she'd lost in the process. Ellie had been a constant presence in Zoe's early years, babysitting, attending birthday parties, bringing over art supplies and spending hours creating with her niece. "She's missed you too," Jason said quietly. "She still has that stuffed otter you gave her for her 3rd birthday. Sleeps with it every night." Ellie blinked rapidly, looking down at her coffee. "Otto the otter. I can't believe she still has him." "Of course she does. You were important to her, Ellie. You still are." A silence fell between them, heavy with the weight of the past and the complicated family dynamics that had kept them apart. "I wanted to reach out," Ellie finally said. "So many times. But Kate was so hurt after the divorce, and she needed me. It felt like I had to choose sides." Jason nodded, understanding even though the memory still stung. "I get it. She's your sister. That's how it should be." "Maybe," Ellie said, looking up to meet his eyes. "But I've regretted losing touch with Zoe. And with you," she added, more quietly. Jason wasn't sure how to respond to that. He and Ellie had always gotten along well during his marriage to Kate, better than he and Kate toward the end, if he was being honest with himself. Ellie's easygoing nature and genuine interest in his work had made her easy to talk to, and they'd often found themselves deep in conversation at family gatherings while Kate socialized with others. "I've missed our conversations," he admitted. "You were always easy to talk to." Ellie's smile returned, warming her eyes. "You too. Kate used to get jealous sometimes, you know." This surprised Jason. "Of you and me? That's ridiculous." We were just friends. Were we? Ellie asked, tilting her head slightly. I always felt like there was something more there. Not that either of us would have acted on it, she added quickly. But a connection. Jason stared at her, momentarily speechless. Had there been something more between them? He'd always enjoyed Ellie's company, looked forward to seeing her at family events, felt a certain spark when they talked. But he'd been married to her sister, committed to that relationship despite its problems. He'd never allowed himself to examine his feelings for Ellie too closely. I don't know what to say to that, he finally admitted. Ellie shrugged, breaking the tension. Nothing to say, really. Ancient history now. I probably shouldn't have brought it up. No, it's okay, Jason said. I guess I'm just surprised. I never thought you felt, whatever it was you felt. Drawn to you, Ellie supplied simply. But like I said, ancient history. We've all moved on. Had they, though? Jason wondered. He certainly hadn't done much moving on in the romance department. And here he was, having coffee with Ellie and feeling more engaged and alive than he had in years. So what about you? He asked, steering the conversation to safer ground. Are you seeing anyone? I mean, you're on the dating app, but... Nothing serious, Ellie said. I dated a guy from work for a few months last year, but it didn't go anywhere. The app was actually my therapist's suggestion, part of putting myself out there or whatever. You're seeing a therapist? Jason asked, then immediately regretted how judgmental it sounded. I mean, that's great. Therapy is great. Ellie laughed, a genuine sound that made several nearby patrons glance over with smiles of their own. Yes, therapy is great. Very insightful, Jason. He grinned, relaxing a bit. Sorry. I'm out of practice with this whole conversation thing. You're doing fine, Ellie assured him. And yes, I've been seeing a therapist for about a year now. Best decision I ever made. Turns out watching your parents' toxic marriage, followed by your sister's divorce, followed by your own series of failed relationships leaves some stuff to unpack. I can imagine, Jason said, though in truth, he couldn't really. His own parents had been happily married for 40 years, providing no template for the failure of his own marriage. I probably should have tried therapy during the divorce. Might have handled things better. It's never too late, Ellie pointed out. Especially when you're raising a child through all this. It helps to have someone objective to talk to. Jason nodded thoughtfully. He'd considered therapy a few times over the past 3 years but always found excuses, too busy, too expensive, not really necessary. But hearing Ellie speak so positively about it made him reconsider. Maybe I'll look into it, he said. For Zoe's sake, if nothing else. For your sake too, Ellie said gently. You deserve to be happy, Jason. Not just existing. The echo of Dave's words startled him. Was it that obvious to everyone that he'd been merely going through the motions of life? Their conversation shifted to lighter topics after that, Ellie's work at the museum, Jason's recent projects at the marketing firm, a movie they'd both seen and disagreed about. It felt surprisingly easy, like reconnecting with an old friend after a long absence. When Ellie glanced at her watch and mentioned another appointment, Jason was shocked to realize they'd been talking for nearly 2 hours. This was nice, Ellie said as they stood to leave. Unexpected, but nice. It was, Jason agreed. Maybe we could do it again sometime. And maybe with Zoe, if that wouldn't be too weird with Kate. Ellie hesitated. Let me talk to Kate first. She's been going through some stuff, and I don't want to blindside her. Of course.